My topic today is going to be the same as everyone else's, just focusing more on the actual tournaments and how to choose the right tournaments in this phase that we're talking about. A couple of stories to start with. Everyone heard of Taylor Fritz. This fella over here, I was traveling with him at the US Open last year, and he played Fritz in the semi-finals. And the day before, I went and watched the quarterfinals of Taylor playing against his opponent. And I realized pretty quickly that Yoon Sung Chung from Korea was going to have a very, very difficult match. All right. He didn't move off the baseline, took the balls early, great serve, incredible returns deep. So I knew it was going to be a very, very difficult day the following day. Sure enough, go on the court, lose a 6-3, 6-2. After the match, I spoke to Chungi. I said, look, the guy's really, really good. We need to learn to sort of lose better, try rather than defending, try maybe to be more aggressive, try to do A, B, C, D. And I said, and in my opinion, his level is probably 70 ATP. So Chungi looked at me and he's like, no, he doesn't move well, he doesn't do this, whatever. So as coaches, we love to be right, all right? And I really enjoyed sending him a WhatsApp. 2 weeks later, he got a wild card into a 125 Challenger. He won that. 2 weeks later, he got into another wild card into 125 Challenger, and he won that. Okay, so he went from over 1,000 in the rankings to 200 in 2 weeks. So if we calculate, let's say, him playing 20 weeks of those tournaments, okay, you can calculate pretty much what is his level. Yeah, it's actually, as it turns out, I'd say if you really do the calculation, probably his level was even higher, all right? And sure enough, he's now confirmed that by playing the tournaments, going through them. So when we're looking at choosing the right tournaments, the career path, the way to go, all right, I always say in tactics, what's the best tactic? Okay, the best tactic is to hit the ball 200 miles per hour on the line. Because if you do that, you win the match. All right, so obviously we can't do that all the time, or not very rarely. So we go 150 miles per hour this far from the line. All right, we can't do that. We go slower further. So I take the same philosophy with choosing tournaments and the pathway. All right, aim high, start as high as you can, and go further than you can, and then come backwards, rather than, I think too often, especially transitioning players will spend the whole first year playing futures and not really challenging themselves. So really to step up as soon as possible, all right, and play those higher level tournaments. For example, this fella here, he is from Chinese Taipei. He got lucky this year. I think his ITF ranking was pretty much 35 in the world. His level, I'd say, is also pretty 35. He's a decent 35 ranked player. So he got an opportunity for a wild card into a 125,000 tournament about 6 weeks ago. He got drawn against a seed who was ranked 131 in the world, and he won the match. So not saying that his level is 131, he's definitely lower. He might be 300-400, okay, level-wise. But just at this young age, you're fearless. You go out there, you swing the racket, you go for it. The sooner you can get out there and play these big matches, big tournaments, the better, okay? And I think the biggest mistake when it comes to organizing a competition schedule is staying too much at the lower ends rather than pushing yourself. And obviously not playing up here and losing all the time, but really trying to challenge yourself up there. The next guy on the There it is. That's Yusuf Hossam from Egypt. Later on, I'm going to finish off the presentation with showing where he is at now and a sort of like a competition schedule for him. So, a couple of the things that we've already, a lot of the stuff we've already gone through, so I'm not going to spend much time on them. First step, obviously, is to gather all your resources. How much money do you have? What do you have? We know the cost of being out there at this stage in the career is extremely expensive. All right, if you're traveling with a coach, if you're in a very good training environment with a good schedule of 25 to 30 weeks, you're looking at more than $100,000 pretty much. So you have to start off, see what you have, all right, gather the information, and then you can make the plan accordingly. The development plan and the competition plan should be integrated and tailored. So this has been discussed, I think, by everyone, that the story about Taylor Fritz, that's his pathway. His pathway is very, very steep, almost no futures, all right? So each player, it's very important to see where they're at, see what you feel is the best progression for them. And it's never going to be the same for any two players. Also, the development plan and the competition plan should go together. So if I formulate these tournaments, can actually go both ways. But you have the plan of the tournaments and you periodize accordingly. All right. Or you have some development goals, development things that you want a player to do. Then you can have those in mind and integrate the plan. So they both really integrate and go together. Periodization plan is essential. And then also the court surface. All right. The way I always try to formulate it with my players is at this stage is very, very important to be going and doing well, and actually the outcome is extremely important. So probably the majority of the time spent on your surface where you're the best, and then 20%, 15% on the other surfaces to build your game, to develop your game. I think the other thing to really keep in mind also is if we spend too much time on the futures level, what ends up happening is we can get stale very quickly and we get sort of playing at that level. All right. And that level, I'd say in the juniors, although they're not as experienced, the actual level and the way people are playing very often is better than going on to the futures level where the experience is more and they're probably, a lot of them slightly better, but the actual tennis isn't as aggressive and as, as far as the challengers and the ATP Tour. That's where you really see the aggressive tennis and the way that you need to play. So the longer you spend on the futures tour, all right, the more difficult it is to learn to be aggressive and to go for it. All right. So really try to get from the junior level and through that area pretty quickly. Okay. So we talked about aiming high. This is just my opinion. This is what I would normally formulate with my players. 25%, okay, of the matches you go on the court, you should win. Okay. And this is specifically at this phase of play, transitioning players. 50% in the balance where it's you're competing, and you could actually even put this even higher. All right. And then 25% as the underdog. So 25% is more like experience, going at the higher level and competing there. Continually reevaluate. So you set your plan, you set your annual plan, and continually reevaluate, see where your ranking is, and set new challenges. Each time you go to the next level, you need more weapons, you need to develop your game more. All right, so also not to forget, All right. Once you get from the futures level to sort of that bottleneck where people come into the Challenger Tour and that, there really is very, very small differences. And you'll see one week this guy wins, the next week he wins, and it really is tiny little differences that make the difference there. Okay. This, already mentioned by someone earlier, is, in my opinion, the most important phase in a player's career, but very often the least organized. So us as federations, and we'd put up our hand as the ITF, from the juniors going up to 18, we're very, very organized. We have plans in place, and then sort of that next year, very often the players are left on their own. Okay, so if you're working or you know any of these players, what I would strongly suggest is make a plan what you think, right? If you know any player that's playing on the futures, toughing it out, make a plan for them and send it to them. What you think. It doesn't even have to be anywhere near what they're going to do, because that's the starting point, and that gets them thinking and gets the thing, and then they'll work around that plan and they'll adjust it to themselves. As I mentioned, probably one of the most underrated areas of our job as coaches, and one slight mistake, one scheduling error can very often mean the difference between a player succeeding and a player not succeeding. Just a general overview of the tournaments we have at the moment. You can see how there's so many futures, lower level tournaments. Here I've got 10,000 and 25,000 on the men's circuit. Next year we know that we are only starting at 15,000 and 25,000. So it'll be 15,000, 15 plus H, 25,000, and 25,000 plus H. Basically guidelines of the prize money and what the winner gets from a ranking point of view. Here, much more detailed, how many points you get at each level. And if you look at the challenges from 125,000 down to 40,000, you can see there's not really that big a difference. So if you can get to that level and be successful, the challenger level, even on the 40, actually that's 42,000. Yeah, 42,000 I think is the first one. Then the points, let's say if we work it out, if you win 5 tournaments, that's 400 ATP points. So how do these points relate to rankings? To be top 100, this was done 8th of October. So to be top 100, you need 595 ATP points. Okay, 390 points will be 150, and we go down. Okay, so if I go back to this slide, you can work it out pretty much quite easily that if you're winning a lot of futures events, you're not going to reach top 100. Okay, so we need to develop a game to be successful at the Challenger Tour level and higher, not at the futures level. All right, and this is a very, very important factor, because if we spend too much time playing on the futures level, we develop a game at that level. All right, but we don't want that. So the idea of futures for players should solely be to go to the futures and to get some points to go and play. All right. So how are the rankings calculated? So the 4 Grand Slams, this is for the top tier players, the 8 ATP Tour Masters, and then the 6 best results from everything else. So for our guys, most of us, I'm sure here, working mostly with the transitioning players, all right, those players in future. So basically, it's your best 18 tournaments. So keep that in mind when you're scheduling. So what ranking do I need to play on the Challenger main draw of a Challenger tour? All right. So I basically took all the figures from last year, and the average was 316, and this year up until now the average is 323. Okay. In Europe here, obviously it will be slightly higher, all right, than other parts of the world. So keep that in mind as well. But when you're scheduling, you can very easily get a hold of the cutoffs for the last year, see more or less whereabouts you are. Okay, but this is very very much a general average of the whole of last year and this year to date. Qualifying. Okay, now this is very interesting. Okay, so actually, almost 3/4 of Challenger Tour tournaments last year and this year, okay, had buys in them. Okay, either buys or a doubles player signs in and gets in with a doubles ranking. Okay, so the point is, all right, on this slide, the point is that if you schedule right, especially tournaments in Asia and that, if you schedule right, you can get into qualifying of Challenger tours. All right, that's the easy part. But the difficult part is it's a big level changer from the futures to the Challenger. It's a very big level difference. So the sooner you get there, all right, the better. Disadvantages, obviously, is the huge expenditure. All right, you have the Challengers all over the place. Normally, there's one or two together maximum. So it really is expensive. But if you have the money and the resources, then I would strongly suggest to make these efforts to go and play these tournaments. Again, the average cutoff for the remainder would be higher here, and it's very important that we do our homework and try and find out what was the ranking last year. Not that, well, yeah, that's only an indication, because if there were 16 buys in a tournament, everyone says, yeah, last year there were 16 buys, and then guess what? Everyone and their dog is there the next year, and the cutoff's 530. All right, so it's just a guideline, but in general, you do see every year the tournaments with the buys and the tournaments you can get into and the tournaments you can. I took this from Tennis Canada. Is Jocelyn here? All right, I borrowed it from Tennis Canada long-term athlete development plan. So here, this is, they call it the learning to be a pro phase, okay, which is the phase that we're talking about, the ages of 19 to 23, okay. Number of peaks up to 6. I think this is probably a bit too high, but most players aiming for 3, 4, 5. I think 6 is the maximum, basically. Number of tournaments per year between 27 and 30, okay. Match ratio here, okay. They mentioned 2 to 1. Top 10 are above 2 to 1. I think from 11 to 50 in the rankings are between 2 to 1 and 1 to 1, actually. And then from 50 to 100, okay, we actually have a losing ratio, with number 102 in the world 1 to 4. All right. So why is that? What is the reason for that? And there's a very very simple reason, that if we go back to the other slide, all right, and you look at the disparity of prize money number 1, all right, and points number 2, if you can just hang in there on the ATP tour and win your 1 match or your 2 matches here or there, you're able to maintain it. All right, so the whole structure, which we're all looking at, we're all trying to have a look at to make it better, so it's more healthier for people coming in and going out, that sort of stuff. But once you're there, you're there. All right, and you can just hang in there and go. So this is also very much a guideline, the 2-to-1 ratio. All right. If you work it out in futures, basically round of 32, round of 16, okay, and you lose quarters. Okay, that's your 2-to-1. All right. So if you're not getting to quarters in futures, then you're either a junior coming up or you're probably not good enough. Okay. So from the transitioning, you should be able to go to futures, in general, get to quarters, semis, final, and win them. All right. If you're going to succeed in getting to top 100, top 150. So that shows you straight away that this ratio is already too high. Okay. So we need, therefore, to have a tougher schedule and go to more difficult tournaments. Okay. The training we're not going to go into. All right. We're just going to focus on the competition. So what would an annual plan look like? So this is the fellow that I showed you in the photograph, Yusuf Hossam from Egypt. His highest junior ranking was 8. His current ranking at the moment is 14. His last junior tournament was the US Open this year. So his ranking, okay, so looking at his ranking now, let's say his current ranking is 1528. I'd say already that's probably a little bit low for this level player. And I'd say looking at his schedule the last year, he probably could have played a few more futures events while he's playing the juniors. This would be basically a schedule that I've put together. I've spoken to him a little bit about it and put it very tentative. Will he actually stick to this? Will he actually play this? I'm not sure. All right. This week here was at the beginning of October. So he finished juniors and we set this up from now for 1 year. All right. So, which was expected, this tournament here was his first futures after coming out of juniors, which he reached the semi-final. So actually the current ranking now, as we speak today, the current ranking is 1,092. All right. So we should be looking, all right, his pathway. He's turning 18 this year. So by the end of this year, all right, that should be his projected ranking. Okay. And by the way, this is something that I spent the last couple of weeks working on, taken from all the players from the developing region, all right, which is the regions that the ITF help. Taken all the players there, worked out each of their years, what their ranking was going along, in conjunction with, for example, the USTA guidelines, the Swiss guidelines, Tennis Canada, all right, a lot of the stuff, putting them all together, and this is what we've sort of come up with, all right, as an ITF player pathway. So if we go back to here, all right, then hopefully after here, all right, this is where he is. He's just starting here. So after these tournaments and that tournament, we want a minimum of 800. Okay. And I think it's very important to understand that the progress is very fast at the start and then it gets very difficult. All right. So if we go here, back there, we go to this one. All right. By the age of 19, all right, should be 500. Okay. The age of 20, 350. And then here it gets much, much tougher. Okay. All right. So in general, these are futures. Okay. Peter mentioned it. A couple of people have already mentioned a good 5 to 6 week training block. All right. Preparation phase pre-season, whatever you want to call it, is extremely important at this level. Very, very important. And without this, you know, injuries, burnout, being stale, all that stuff are prevalent. So we go training blocks, pretty much 3 weeks, training blocks of 2 weeks. All right. And then here, playing in France, he's also training at the moment at Muratoglu, or he comes and goes from Muratoglu. So he'll be in France, throw in a challenger, which is in France there. All right, good training block. Then these tournaments are the ones that he really wants to try and achieve, try to do well and get points. Okay, so some of the majority of tournaments will be to try and get your ranking up, and then some of the tournaments is for experience. Okay, so there we go. And then here right at the end, September, these are 3 challenges also. So taking into account where accommodation is cheap, where you can maybe even stay for free, some of the places. Okay, and as a summary, all right, 26 tournaments, all right, 77 futures tournaments, 23 challenges. So if I go back to the 25%, 50%, 25%, that works out in line with that here. All right, rest. In general, 3 to 5 weeks rest, preparation phase. And I've worked it out, given everything, where he's going to stay, where he can stay for free and all that. The cost of just the competition schedule will be $40,000. Okay. Then on top of that, you've got training costs, which if he's at Muratoglu are extremely expensive, although he gets a good deal. All right. And then also you've got your coaching fees as well. So in his situation, he's going to have to operate with a coach part-time, traveling sometimes to tournaments, other times. That's the way he's going to work it out to be able to pay for it. Okay. So if we go to year 2, all right. So the schedule that I've done is year 1. All right. So for year 2, 28 tournaments, now going 60% futures, 40% challenges. Okay. Schedule, the cost of the schedule goes up. Year 3, same number of tournaments, now trying to get more into the challenges. All right. Year 4, 25% futures, 75% challenges and ATP qualifying. And then year 5, hopefully, all right, challenges and ATP. Looks very easy, huh? Yes. Looks a lot easier here than it actually is. Okay, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.